A white point moves beside Orion, not behind it. Not across the frame, beside it. At first, the question is simple. What is it? A few moments later, a different question replaces it. How far away is it? In deep space, those are not the same question. And the second one is usually more dangerous. In the black emptiness surrounding the spacecraft, that should be a temporary sight. Something separates, drifts away, and disappears. Instead, this object remains visible long enough for people tracking the mission to keep watching. And that is where the problem begins. NASA's Artemis II mission will send astronauts around the moon aboard Orion before the spacecraft returns toward Earth. During that return, Orion is moving through space at extraordinary speed. In that environment, size becomes a misleading measurement. A bright speck can be tiny. A bright speck can also be dangerous. The object slides slowly relative to Orion, almost calmly. The camera offers no sense of scale, no sound, no distance markers, just a white point holding near a crew vehicle surrounded by darkness. The emptiness feels safe until something refuses to leave it. At lunar-return velocities, apparent motion can hide violent reality. An object that seems nearly stationary may still carry enough relative speed to threaten windows, sensors, thermal protection surfaces, or exposed hardware. Because if it is harmless debris, it should separate cleanly. If it is background, it should drift away. If it belongs somewhere else, it should stop sharing Orion's path.
Negative. Station 2
Instead,
shows a lateral transit.
The small white point remains. Not close enough to identify. Not far enough to ignore. And against the black of space, it hangs beside Orion like a problem that has not made up its mind. A tracking box locks onto the dot. On one screen, it appears to drift away from Orion. On another, the motion looks different. The object seems to slide across the spacecraft's path instead of separating from it. Nothing dramatic happens. That is exactly what makes it difficult. The white point remains steady enough to watch, but unstable enough to interpret in more than one way. Against a black background with no visible depth, distance starts to become a guess instead of a measurement. And distance becomes the first failure. NASA's Orion spacecraft follows a return path from the moon back toward Earth. Every prediction depends on knowing where surrounding objects actually are, not where they appear to be. For the crew inside Orion, instinct has almost no value here. No one can glance through a window and dodge. Protection depends on tracking, modeling, and predicting motion before danger arrives. The object continues moving, or appears to. A tracking marker follows the dot across starless black. One view suggests harmless drift. Another hints at a trajectory that cannot yet be ruled out. The disagreement is small, but at lunar return speeds, small disagreements do not stay small for long.
Houston, we have visual on
the white point still looks calm. The uncertainty around it does not.
Slightly as we approach.
The disagreement begins to fade. Not because the object disappears, but because a simpler explanation starts to fit what everyone is seeing. A brief flash of sunlight catches the white point. Orion slowly rotates. The object drifts with it, almost like a companion sharing the same path through space. For the first time, the movement looks familiar. Not an interceptor. Not an incoming threat. Maybe just debris. If two objects are traveling through the same enormous return corridor, they may appear almost motionless relative to one another, even while both are racing toward Earth. NASA's Orion follows a gravity-shaped path home from the Moon, and for a moment, the sighting seems to settle into something understandable. The dot dims, brightens again, continues drifting through sunlight beside the spacecraft. Nothing about its motion suggests urgency. Nothing appears to be closing rapidly. The scene almost becomes ordinary. But Orion is carrying a crew. That changes the standard. An object does not become safe because it looks predictable. It becomes safe when its future path is known. Until then, the capsule cannot simply ignore it. The white point keeps drifting.
Orion, Houston, we see the white point.
If the debris explanation is correct, separation should
that,
continue.
Houston. Just a bit of
The distance
parallax
should
rotating.
gradually increase. The tracking should become less important with every passing minute. Instead, the object grows fainter without fully leaving the tracking view. Still present. Still unresolved. Instead, a tracking update arrives, and the dot remains inside the concern zone. That is when the debris explanation starts to lose its value. A good explanation reduces uncertainty. Each new observation should make the situation easier to predict. This one does not. The white point continues drifting through darkness while Orion moves toward the next phase of its return planning. On the display, the geometry keeps changing. Small updates alter projected paths. Tiny adjustments ripple forward through time. The object remains part of the calculation. NASA's Orion must survive a precise return to Earth after its lunar flyby. Speed, timing, and atmospheric entry all depend on knowing where the spacecraft will be and what will be near it when critical moments arrive. A crew inside Orion depends on systems making decisions long before human eyes could recognize a problem. By the time someone sees danger through a window, options may already be gone. Prediction is the protection layer. And that layer is beginning to slip. A new overlay updates across the screen. The dot is still there. The numbers change. The concern does not. What should have become a solved observation is turning into a moving geometry problem carried all the way toward Earth. Earth is getting larger now. Blue. White. Familiar. And somewhere behind Orion, the unresolved point is finally fading from practical view. Not explained, not fully identified,
Orion, Houston,
simply
track
overtaken
limb
by
is steady.
something larger.
Copy that shift
The
on heat
spacecraft
shield.
is
Alignment
falling
holding in the
home.
corridor.
That sounds safe until you remember what comes next. NASA built Orion to carry astronauts to the Moon and bring them back to Earth. But returning is not a gentle arrival. The capsule must hit a narrow entry corridor at tremendous speed, too steep, and conditions become unforgiving. Too shallow, and the spacecraft can skip away from the atmosphere entirely. Earth becomes the next danger. From a distance, the planet fills half the view. It looks enormous, yet the safe path through its upper atmosphere is thin compared with the world below. Orion continues descending toward that invisible target while the final tracking predictions settle into place. The old problem never completely disappears. It simply stops being the dominant one. Inside the capsule, survival is no longer about identifying a distant object. It becomes a matter of heat, timing, trajectory, and trust. Long before atmospheric glow appears outside the windows, critical decisions have already been made. That is the rule of deep space return. Motion must be understood before the atmosphere arrives. The blue planet keeps growing. The white point fades behind Orion. Prediction does